everyone, welcome to this episode of Think Piece. Thank you for joining me today. I will be discussing a topic that I've discussed before pertaining to men who feel emasculated by their wives. And I'm bringing this up because there was a woman named Shanteari Weems who was recently sentenced to 4 years in prison for shooting her husband after she found out that he was molesting the children that were in her child care program. I'm going to read the article from thewoundedwomb and then add my commentary to this. So the article states that a Baltimore woman, well, the title of the article is Woman Who Shot Husband After Accusations of Child Molestation at a Daycare Center She Owned Pleads Guilty. A Baltimore woman pleaded guilty to assault and gun charges after shooting her husband for allegedly molesting children who attended the daycare she owned. Now, she owned this daycare since 2005, and she's only been married to this guy for 5 years when this incident happened. So one of two things is possible. Either he targeted her because of her relationship with children and her access to children, or he targeted her because he wanted access to her resources because she was relatively successful by her own right, okay? And this guy, he was working for her, basically. Anyway, so according to People magazine, Shanteari Weems, 50, reportedly confronted her husband, James Weems Jr., on July 21st, 2022, following accusations from the parents of 3 children who frequented Little Kids Castle Daycare Center, her child care hub in Owings Mills, Maryland. She faces up to 2 years in prison after pleading guilty last Monday to aggravated assault and unlawful firearm possession. As I stated earlier, she got convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison a couple days ago. So yeah, this is a few months ago. This article was written. So we're not asking anyone to feel sorry for her, but we're asking people to have empathy for her, said Tony Garcia, Shanteari Weems' attorney, People reported. James Weems, 57, he's 7 years older than her, right? A retired Baltimore police officer, spent 2 years working as a bus driver at his wife's business. So Shanteari probably thought that this guy was ex-police, right? He was vetted, bonded, he had no criminal record or whatever that was on paper. She probably figured he was a good catch. And she got married at 45 years old, something like that. He was in his mid-50s by then. But he married her, in my opinion, because she had her stuff together. And this dude essentially ruined her life, in my opinion, because like Martell and Melody, he resented the fact that she was in charge. She was the boss in the relationship. She was writing his checks, okay? He had to answer to her. And when men feel emasculated in their relationships, they usually go behind their wives' backs and they cheat. And they do things to sabotage the relationship. And this is what Martell was doing with Arion, right? Melody was very successful, confident, outspoken, very capable. She had a lot of things going for her. And Martell felt like he could not get her to submit to him, or he felt like she was in charge of the relationship. She was too powerful, too strong, and he wanted to kind of break her down to size. So because Martell still wanted to stay married to Melody while resenting her, he went behind her back and started a whole relationship with someone else and was pretty much weaponizing this woman against his wife because she was too strong. I feel like this guy, James, was doing the same thing when he was molesting these children. He was trying to get his power back, and he was doing it behind his wife's back. It's almost like passive-aggressive, self-destructive behavior, okay? So Garcia claimed, back to the article, Garcia claimed his client shot her husband in self-defense when he approached her in a threatening manner, which I'm sure he did, right? Because imagine if you confronted someone about being a molester and the implications of that legally, right? So he could go to jail for that. And a lot of men get violent, as I mentioned yesterday. They get violent when they feel threatened or insecure. So I believe her when she said that she, felt threatened by him and she had to shoot him. He's ex-cop too. So he's not like he's somebody who doesn't have the capacity to perform acts of violence on people, period. Garcia claimed his client shot her husband in self-defense when he approached her in a threatening manner during their confrontation about the accusations, which took place in a room at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Washington. And this room, from what I read, was like $400 a night. So she wasn't broke. She had money, beautiful, independent, successful, and married to a man who pretty much needed her for sustenance. Okay? He was her employee. A lot of successful women, especially black women, they hire their husbands as their managers. Wendy Williams did this. Mary J. Blige did this. Kelly Clarkson did this. A lot of women who are married to men who were not as successful as them, they turn the men into their managers so that the men can feel like they're managing their lives. They have some control and dominance and some sort of power over the women, because a lot of men cannot function well in an environment where they're not in charge. A lot of them become resentful and self-destructive when a woman is their boss. It's as simple as that. They can't handle it. Not all men, but most men, from my experience, have a difficult time dealing with women who are very dominant, assertive, self-confident, and not male-centered or male-identified, okay? So according to the Assistant U.S. Attorney Latavia Massey Banks, Shanteari Weems deliberately shot her spouse in the neck during the violent argument. She then approached him as he lay still on the hotel room floor and shot him in the leg. I'm going to say this. I think this was a psychotic break, because she found out about this incident while she was in the hotel room with him. So I think from what I read before in another article, Shanteari and her husband were like, just hanging out, I guess, winding down for the night. And they received some text messages from parents saying that their children were watching porn or something like that. And so it kind of caught her off guard. I think she had a momentary lapse of judgment, and she kind of sort of had a psychotic break, because this man essentially ruined her business and her life. And on top of that, he hurt the children that were in her care. Okay? And some women like me are mama bears. If you hurt children, then we're going to hurt you. Some women see all children like their children. Okay? And that's why I love working with kids, because a lot of children nowadays don't have the emotional support or nurturing from their parents because they work so much, right? And so when I was working with children years ago, I got the opportunity to pretty much be a surrogate mother to these children and to give them love and acceptance and guidance as if they were my own kids. And if somebody from the street were to come along and try to hurt those kids, I would protect those kids as if they were my own. And so this man essentially used her business to get access to children, and he pretty much traumatized or damaged the children in her care. So she had good reason to shoot him, and I probably would have done the same thing. Real talk. Okay? More than likely he was jealous of her, and he felt emasculated by her, and so he needed to do something to feel like he was in charge, or he was the boss, or he had control, and he preyed on children to do that. And legally, the children were her responsibility. So she's thinking, okay, this is my husband. He's an ex-police officer. I can trust him. He doesn't have a criminal record. Like, when you work around children, you need to do a background check. And sometimes they ask for 10 years of work history, of residential history. They want to know all your business because they want to make sure you don't have a record of, abusing kids or psychological illnesses. You have to get a psych evaluation, drug testing. A lot of things have to take place for you to be around children. And this guy passed those tests. He passed all those tests, and he was still able to slip through the cracks and ruin this lady's business, her life, and the lives of those children that he molested. So yeah, she was angry, humiliated, shocked, sad. Like, there's so many emotions that rush through you when you find out your husband is not only a molester, but he's molesting children in your business, and you hired your enemy. She was sleeping with the enemy, basically, like many women are, and they don't know until it's too late. Okay, so following the altercation, back to the article. Following the altercation, police found 2 guns and a notebook in the hotel room. I think that Shanteari was a correction officer at some point. I think so. So she's not unfamiliar with law enforcement, okay? And that's what probably made her a good candidate for having this type of facility where she's providing daycare services to children, okay? So she was a perfect candidate for that, and she had a successful business since 2005, before she met this guy. They get married, in 2018, 2017, and her whole life falls apart afterwards. He resented her. Okay, So following the altercation, police found 2 guns and a notebook in the hotel room. Its pages allegedly contained a will of sorts by Shanteari Weems, along with her intention to shoot her husband and paralyze him rather than kill him. People previously reported that a warrant was issued for James Weems' arrest days after the shooting, which is great. He's in custody now, held without bond, charged with more than 30 counts of child sexual abuse and assault involving at least 4 alleged victims. His trial is set for May of 2023. Baltimore County detectives reportedly had already initiated an investigation into the former officer prior to his arrest after learning about the abuse allegations. She thought that she was not going to survive that evening, and again, I understand how she was feeling. You see all these stories of men killing women for a whole lot less. Now imagine confronting your husband, who's an ex-police officer, about being a child molester. Yeah, she was in danger. In my opinion, I think she was in danger. So she thought that she was not going to survive that evening. She wrote a note. In that note, she wrote that she had no intention of killing him at all, but she did have an intent to stop him from molesting more children. And the article ends there. So the article I just read was from December of last year. This article I'm reading now from WBAL TV was published on February 3rd, okay? And it states that the Baltimore County woman who shot her husband at a Washington, D.C. hotel in July 2022 was sentenced to prison. Shanteari Weems was sentenced Friday to 4 years in prison, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. She pleaded guilty in November 2022 to shooting her husband, James Weems Jr., saying it was an act of self-defense. Shanteari Weems said she shot her husband over child sex abuse allegations at her daycare center. James Weems Jr., a retired Baltimore City police officer, was arrested on several sex offense charges. He is scheduled to go to trial in the summer. Okay, I guess that's the end of the article. That's it already? All right. So yeah, she got, sentenced to 4 years in jail. This man ruined her life. However, I don't know if she'll be able to have a child care facility once she gets out of prison because of the actions she took to protect these children. I don't even know. It's a lot. It's really a lot. I don't know if she would be able to stay in that business because her ex-husband was convicted of doing this, and legally she's married to him. And legally, because it's her business, her organization, she's responsible for hiring people who will protect the children as much as she is. So they may hold her liable for whatever happened with him and the kids, and she may not be able to work in the same industry again. This is why I always, warn women who are successful to be careful about fantasizing about marriage. If you have it all already, right? Great job, financially secure, you're beautiful, you're healthy, you have a full life without a man. Be careful not to say, I have everything but a man. Because when we have a deficit mentality when it comes to these men, we end up settling for men who are not even on our level, who are not good enough to be with us. So what happens a lot of times is that women are more focused on relationships than men are, in my opinion. They feel empty without relationships more than men do. Men value sexual access over committed partnership and relationship. Women are the ones who are conditioned to want to be with one guy and have him be her end all be all, her happily ever after, her knight in shining armor, all this mess, right? Now, even though you have a full life, you're beautiful, you take care of children, a lot of women feel like their lives are missing something, right? They're not enough by themselves. I need to be with a man to feel like I have it all. I have everything. And I'm not saying that being with a man is bad. Wanting to share your life with somebody is not a bad thing. But what happens is when you put these men on a pedestal or these women on a pedestal and you already have a full life, you're happy and successful and secure by yourself, when you put relationships on a pedestal, what ends up happening sometimes is that you're willing to sacrifice everything you've worked hard for to maintain or preserve or attain an ideal that is not based on reality. That's not rooted in anything real, right? It's based on a fantasy that's been created by a patriarchal culture, right? A woman is nothing without a man. A woman is nothing without children. A woman is nothing if she's not beautiful. A woman is nothing if other men don't want her. And so when we subscribe to this deficit thinking of like, we're not enough, we're not good enough, we're going to put up with a whole bunch of mess and ignore red flags just for the sake of having a relationship. And now this lady's life is ruined by somebody who she was taking care of. She was writing his checks. She was successful before she met him. And that's probably why he wanted to be with her, right? She's a beautiful woman too, yes. But he wanted to be with somebody who looked good on his arm, okay, who had her own money, which is fine. But a lot of men can't handle a woman like that over time. They usually do something behind the woman's back, passive aggressively, to balance the scales in their mind. So if she's running things and running the business and running the money and she's the more dominant partner, I'm going to go behind her back and mess with somebody who I can control. And in this case, it was children. But men do it with affairs and mistresses and side pieces all the time. It's not nothing new, right? So it's very precarious being a successful woman, marrying a man who's essentially dependent on you, right? And we always talk about as far as like women on social media, we always warn women about marrying men who are not successful or men who you have to take care of because they resent you for it. One of two things will happen. Either they will resent you for being the boss and having control over them in that relationship, or they will become helpless and emasculated and you won't get no help at all. You're doing everything by yourself. You're paying all the bills by yourself, taking care of the household by yourself. They become children. So either they cheat on you, right, out of resentment, or they become children. You saw what happened with Kevin Hunter and Wendy Williams. He resented her so much that he had a full-blown relationship with somebody who wasn't even on Wendy's level. Now that they're divorced, he still needs Wendy's money to take care of a woman who he was cheating on his wife with for over a decade and had a baby with. So Wendy Williams' husband was willing to sabotage his marriage to a successful woman who was really loyal to him. Wendy Williams has issues, but she was down for her husband. To stay with somebody for that long while they were cheating on you and you knew about it and still try to hold them up as some sort of paragon of masculinity and fatherhood and a good husband, she was down for him until the baby came, because it showed that he really had no respect or regard for her whatsoever. And on top of that, she did not want to pay child support to this baby, period. So in my opinion, like I said about Martell and Melody, Kevin Hunter did what many men do when they're married to powerful, strong, successful women. They find someone who can submit to them. They find someone to spend their wife's money on so they can feel like the man, like they're in charge. And I'm not saying that you can't be in a happy, healthy, loving relationship as a successful woman. What I'm saying is that it gets harder because a lot of these men, they may say they want an independent woman, but a lot of men like the idea of their woman needing them, of their woman being afraid to lose them. That's how they maintain their control. And when they don't have that kind of control, they will create situations where the woman feels insecure. And they do this by cheating or being abusive or being dismissive or being absent as far as emotionally disconnected. These men try to find a way to get you to bend to their will, especially if you're successful. It's not always the case. But if a man is not successful in his own right, if he doesn't have his own money, right? If he doesn't have as much fame or power as you do, we saw this with Whitney Houston, Bobby Brown. If he doesn't have that on his own, he will do things to break the woman down. And one of the most common ways of doing that is cheating. That's the easiest way to break a woman down. What did I do wrong? How can I fix this? I didn't know you weren't happy. We saw Halle Berry talked about this when she was married to Eric Benet, and she found out that he was cheating with women all over the place. He had a sex addiction, right? And she blamed herself for it. This is the most successful, beautiful woman in the world, based on Hollywood standards. And he was still cheating because he felt some kind of way about his wife being Halle Berry, and he could not hold a candle to her. So he went the passive aggressive route and started cheating on her incessantly behind her back because he didn't want to lose her, right? She was still valuable to him for whatever reason. She's the epitome of beauty and success and glamour and everything else. So he valued her for that. But at the same time, he couldn't handle the pressures of feeling like he wasn't enough for her. He wasn't good enough for her. That's partially reason. And he also had an addiction to sex too. So many men who are married to women who are more successful, beautiful, more powerful, more accomplished, they do these things behind their back. It's not always the case, but there are too many examples of this happening for us to say that this is a one-off. It's just, happenstance. It's a coincidence. No, a lot of men who are not as successful, married to beautiful, successful women, feel like they have to compete with their women, and they do things behind their back. That's all, to get power. And this is one of the reasons why I was concerned about A$AP Rocky and Rihanna's relationship. It's all good now, but something tells me that down the line, there's going to be some problems, some hidden things that will happen in their relationship because he can't handle the amount of power, prestige, fame, and wealth that she has. And he already admitted to having a sex addiction. And I wouldn't be surprised if A$AP does something behind Rihanna's back down the line because he feels emasculated and wants to be with somebody he has control over. A lot of men have this issue. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, right? I hope that I'm wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now, Rihanna does some sort of expose or interview about how abusive her relationship was with A$AP. Not necessarily physical abuse, but like psychological, emotional. She's still finding herself as a woman and as a mother. Okay, she spent the majority of her life as an adult in the industry in an artificially constructed environment. And I really, really, really do hope that A$AP stays in his lane and he doesn't feel like Rihanna is emasculating him. And hopefully he doesn't feel like he has to do something destructive to their relationship or to Rihanna's self-esteem to assert his masculinity over her. I've heard some horror stories of men who were like snipers, who waited in the cut for years and years and years. And then they struck when the woman was completely vulnerable and dependent on them. I hope that does not happen in this case. But yeah, back to Shanteari. If I were her, I would have done the same thing. I probably would have shot that man. If nothing else, because of the kids. Like, how dare you use my company, my business, my organization that's responsible for protecting children, and you're preying on the children under my care? It's like there's so many levels of betrayal there. I'm not surprised she did it. And I'm happy she only got 4 years. I think she should gotten a lighter sentence, but at least she'll be out within 4 years, hopefully shorter. And hopefully she'll be able to start her business again, because she knows, if the parents in the community know that she's willing to protect them from anything. I'm willing to shoot somebody and go to jail to protect these kids. That could be her. That could be her motto. I don't know. But I don't know. It's rough. It's kind of hard to say if you are married to a convicted child molester, like how that's going to affect your business as a child care provider. That's insane. Almost 20 years of her life destroyed because somebody from the street came around and wanted to be part of what she was building and couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle her writing his checks. He couldn't handle it. I'm sorry. I think he was already a pedophile before this even happened. I think that he targeted her because she had a child care facility with lots of children. But the fact that she was making all this money and writing his checks, that was the icing on the cake of emasculation for him. And I think he really, really, really resented her for it. He really did. Okay? Alright guys, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to your comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I will speak to you soon.